The room went silent before the first punch was ever thrown. Not because of the roar of a crowd, not because of the flash of cameras, but because Muhammad Ali, a man who had stared down Sonny Liston, traded punishment with Joe Frazier for 15 brutal rounds, and never once lost his composure in any arena on earth, had gone completely, utterly still. His eyes were fixed on the center of the ring, and in that center stood a man who weighed 135 pounds soaking wet, wearing plain black trousers and a white t-shirt, facing one of the most dangerous heavyweight fighters who had ever lived. That man was Bruce Lee. Los Angeles, California, March 1967. The Main Street Gym, tucked into a neighborhood that smelled of concrete and ambition, was the kind of place where legends were built in silence, where the clang of iron and the thud of leather on leather were the only language that mattered. On this particular afternoon, the gym had been cleared of its usual crowd. In its place stood approximately 40 witnesses, trainers, fighters, managers, and a handful of men who had heard whispers about something extraordinary and refused to stay home. Joe Frazier had arrived early. Smokin' Joe, the Philadelphia brawler who would go on to become world heavyweight champion, who hit like a freight train and absorbed punishment like a man made of granite. He was already warming up, shadowboxing in the corner, his thick arms carving arcs through the gymnasium air. He had heard the stories. He had seen the television clips. He wanted to know the truth. Muhammad Ali sat ringside on a folding metal chair, arms crossed, watching everything with those calculating eyes that had always seen further than anyone gave him credit for. And Bruce Lee had just walked through the door. Joe Frazier at this moment in his career was something close to immovable. 6 feet tall, 205 pounds of compact, coiled muscle. His left hook, the famous left hook, had been described by trainers as one of the most naturally devastating weapons in the history of boxing. He had been training since he was a teenager, working in slaughterhouses to build his strength, developing a punching power that was almost freakish given his relatively modest frame. His style was relentless forward pressure, a smothering aggression that broke opponents down physically and psychologically. He never stopped moving forward. He had never learned how to retreat. His record spoke without sentiment. Fights entered with full commitment, opponents dispatched with mechanical efficiency. He had floored men larger than himself, men with longer reaches, men with faster hands. None of it had mattered. What mattered in Frazier's world was whether you could take what he was giving and give something back. Almost nobody could. The gym understood what it was watching when Frazier climbed between the ropes. It understood that this was not a sparring partner. This was not a demonstration. This was Joe Frazier doing what Joe Frazier did. Bruce Lee, on the other hand, stood 5 feet 7 inches tall and weighed 138 pounds. He wore no training gear. He had not stretched publicly, had not taped his hands, had not taken off his watch. He moved through the gym with the particular stillness of someone who has nothing to prove, which, paradoxically, was the most dangerous kind of presence in any room. He was 26 years old. He had been training since he was a child in Hong Kong under the legendary Ip Man, had developed his own synthesis of martial philosophy he called Jeet Kune Do, and had spent the last several years quietly challenging the assumptions of every martial art he encountered. He was fast. People who had seen him move described it afterward in the halting language of people trying to explain something the eyes had witnessed, but the brain had not yet processed. Frazier looked at him across the ring and said nothing. His expression was professional neutrality. He had been asked to step in. He had stepped in. The invitation had come through mutual contacts the previous week. Frazier's camp had made it clear that Joe was curious, not dismissive, not contemptuous, but genuinely interested in what all the talk was about. The message relayed back to Bruce was simple. Come to the gym, step into the ring, show us something real. Bruce had read the message, set it down, and replied with 3 words. I'll be there. He was there. The 40 witnesses arranged themselves around the ring. Ali leaned forward in his folding chair. A trainer rang the bell. 42 people in that room. 42 people who would spend the rest of their lives describing what happened next. The accounts would spread through gyms and dojos and film sets across Los Angeles and then across the country. Some would call them exaggeration. The people who were there would simply say, "You had to be in the room." Frazier came forward immediately. Of course he did. It was the only thing he knew. The only thing he trusted. He moved with the rolling, shoulder-dipping bob that made him so difficult to hit cleanly. His left hook already loaded, already dangerous. His eyes fixed on the small man standing across from him. Bruce Lee moved offline. Not backward, not sideways in a panic. He moved at an angle, a precise, deliberate angle that took him out of the direct line of Frazier's approach while simultaneously repositioning him in a space Frazier had not anticipated. Frazier's first combination hit air. His second was already loaded when Bruce's right hand appeared at the edge of his peripheral vision. Not a punch, a placement. Bruce's palm touched the side of Frazier's neck with the lightest possible pressure, enough to let Frazier feel it, enough to make the message clear. He could have. He chose not to. Frazier reset. His jaw tightened slightly. He came forward again, this time with the feint, the famous dip and drive that disguised the left hook behind a dropped shoulder. It had fooled men with 3 times Bruce's experience. Bruce did not respond to the feint. He was already moving before the hook arrived, using a technique from Wing Chun, a tan saw deflection, the wrist rotating outward to guide the incoming force rather than resist it. That redirected Frazier's power several inches off its intended path. The hook traveled past Bruce's ear close enough to feel the air displacement. In the same fluid motion, Bruce stepped inside. There's no good way to describe what happened next to someone who was not in the room. Frazier, in the aftermath, described it as like trying to grab water. The witnesses described it as watching a man fight a principle rather than a person. Bruce occupied the inside space, the space Frazier owned, the space that made Frazier dangerous, and made it disappear. His elbow was up, controlling the center line. His hips were turned. 3 fingers pressed against Frazier's solar plexus, with a force that was not remarkable in isolation, but landed in precisely the moment when Frazier's own body weight was committed forward. Smokin' Joe sat down. Not violently, not dramatically. He sat down the way a person sits when their legs have briefly forgotten their purpose. His corner was on their feet. The gym made a sound that was not quite a gasp and not quite silence, but something in between. He was back on his feet in 4 seconds. His expression had changed. Frazier looked at Bruce Lee across the ring for a long moment. Then he rolled his neck. He raised his hands again. And for the next 6 minutes, he did not try to beat Bruce Lee. He tried to understand him. They worked together through combinations, Frazier throwing, Bruce moving, the dynamic shifting from confrontation to something closer to conversation. A right cross, a redirected right cross, a left hook, an intercepting stop hit that arrived before the hook was fully committed. The Jeet Kune Do principle of intercepting the attack at its origin rather than waiting for its destination. Frazier would pause, process, try again. At one point, Frazier threw a combination that most men in that gym would have needed to simply absorb and survive. Bruce slipped the first punch, parried the second with a pack saw, a slapping deflection of the incoming wrist, and used the energy of the parry to redirect his own hand toward Frazier's chest. Light contact. Point made. Stop, Frazier said. He was breathing hard. Bruce was not. Joe Frazier climbed out of the ring. He walked across to where Bruce Lee was standing, and he extended his hand, not the hand of a defeated man. Frazier had not been beaten in any meaningful sense, had not been hurt, had not been humiliated. He extended the hand of a man who had just encountered something he hadn't expected and had the professional integrity to acknowledge it. Bruce shook it. Frazier said, "That's not boxing." Bruce said no. Frazier thought about that for a moment. Then, "That's something else." "It's everything else," Bruce said. Muhammad Ali had not moved from his folding chair during the entirety of the exchange. He sat with his arms still crossed, his chin slightly elevated, watching the handshake at the side of the ring. When Frazier walked past him, Ali reached out and touched his arm. "You feel that?" Ali asked. Frazier looked at him. "Feel what?" "That thing he does, when you don't know where he is anymore." Frazier sat down beside him. For a moment neither man said anything. Ali turned his head and looked at where Bruce Lee was now talking quietly with the trainer near the far wall, already apparently disengaged from what had just happened, already somewhere else in his thinking. "I've been in the ring with Fast," Ali said. This is something different. Fast I can see. This. He's somewhere else before you've decided to be somewhere. The distinction Ali was drawing was not technical. He wasn't talking about hand speed or reaction time in any measurable sense. He was talking about the gap between intention and execution, the fraction of a moment in which most fighters telegraph what they're about to do, the shift of weight, the loading of the shoulder, the commitment of the foot, and the fact that Bruce Lee seemed to operate in that gap itself, to live in the space between thought and action where other fighters were still deciding. It was the thing that could not be trained into someone who did not already possess it. It was the thing that separated technique from art. Bruce Lee drove home that evening through the Los Angeles dusk, the city spreading out flat and golden around him, and he wrote in his training journal that night about the concept he called the intercepting fist. Not a technique, but an attitude, a relationship to time, the understanding that the best defense was to arrive before the attack rather than to respond to it. He wrote, "Do not think, feel. It is like a finger pointing at the moon. Don't concentrate on the finger, or you will miss all of that heavenly glory." Joe Frazier would go on to become heavyweight champion of the world. Muhammad Ali would reclaim his title, fight the greatest fights in boxing history, and cement his place as something beyond sports. Both men, in interviews over the years that followed, would occasionally be asked about Bruce Lee. Both men would pause before answering. Frazier once said, toward the end of his life, that the only time he had ever been in a situation in which he genuinely did not know what the other person was going to do before it happened was in that gym in 1967. Not in any of his championship fights. Not against Ali. Not against Foreman. In that gym. Against that small man in the plain black trousers. He wasn't fighting you, Frazier said. He was showing you something. And once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it. 42 witnesses, 1 ring, 8 minutes, and a man who weighed 138 pounds teaching 2 of the greatest heavyweight fighters in history. That size is only one variable in an equation that has many others, and that the most important of those variables has no weight at all. It lives somewhere between thought and action. It moves before you're ready. Bruce Lee understood that. He lived there. And on that afternoon in Los Angeles, for those 42 people standing around a ring in a gym that smelled of concrete and ambition, he proved it. Not by winning a fight, but by demonstrating something that went beyond winning. He demonstrated that the greatest weapon is the one your opponent never sees coming, because it doesn't arrive from outside. It arrives from the place where you've already gone still.